Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the FFA Way podcast. I'm your host, Madison Polly, and I'm so glad you guys are here and listening. I hope you guys have had a great summer so far. I know I have. In fact, tomorrow morning, I'll be leaving for Tahoe, where I'll be at my mom's wedding, which will be very exciting. And you know what? Summer is a pretty funny thing. For 10 months out of the year, our lives are scheduled down to the minute. We wake up early, we rush to school, go to practice, we work on our SAE projects, volunteer in our communities, and somehow squeeze homework into a few hours we have left before bed. And then it all stops, and our alarms aren't as early, the meetings disappear from our calendars, the blue jacket gets hung in the closet, and for the first time in months, we finally have something we have been all wishing for all year: time. But here's the interesting thing about time. It is one of the only things we all receive equally. Every single one of us gets 24 hours in a day, yet somehow, by the time August rolls around, some people feel like summer flew by, while others feel like they have completely transformed. That difference isn't talent, and it isn't luck, and it isn't who has the most resources, who comes from the biggest chapter, but it's what they choose to do with the time they were given. And you know, agriculture teaches us lesson better than almost anything else. A farmer doesn't wait until harvest season to start preparing. They don't wake up one morning in October and decide they want a great crop. The harvest is determined months before anyone else sees the results. It is decided when the soil is prepared, when the seeds are planted, when the fields are watered, and someone chooses to show up every day, even when there's nothing exciting to see. Because for a long time, growth happens underground. Nobody applauds the roots. Nobody takes pictures of the seed. Nobody celebrates the quiet days when nothing seems to be happening. But without those days, there's no harvest. And I think our lives work the same way. Sometimes we think success begins in the moment we walk into school wearing our corduroy jackets on the first day. But we imagine that confidence starts at officer interviews, that public speaking begins when we step behind a podium, or that winning a contest starts the day of the competition. But that's not where those stories begin, and they begin in moments like these, on quiet summer afternoons or mornings when nobody's asking you to study, on evenings when you choose to scroll for another hour or spend that hour investing in the person you're becoming. The truth is, nobody's going to make you utilize your summer. There isn't a grade for it. There isn't an attendance sheet. Your advisor probably isn't checking to see if you're reading about agriculture or practicing your speech. That is exactly what makes summer so powerful. It is one of the few times all year your growth is completely your responsibility. And now, before we go any further, I want to make something really clear. This episode is not about fulfilling every minute of your summer with work. You deserve the rest. Go to the lake, sleep every once in a while, spend time with your family, go on road trips, laugh with your friends, make memories. Those moments matter just as much as anything you will accomplish in FFA. But here's what I don't want for you. I don't want you to wake up the night before school starts wondering where your summer went. I don't want you to look back wishing you had started your SAE earlier, practice your speech one more time, or finally read that leadership book that's been sitting on your shelf. Because the beautiful thing about today is that none of it has happened yet. You still have time. And you still have the opportunity to plant seeds that your future self will be thankful for. So today, we're talking about how to utilize your summer, not by saying busy for the sake of being busy, but by making intentional choices that will prepare you for one of your best years in FFA yet. Whether you're a brand new green hand getting ready to wear your jacket for the very first time, or a senior preparing for your final year in the organization, I hope this episode encourages you to see summer a little differently. Not as the season between school years, but as the season where next year's success begins. So grab your notebook, head out on a walk, or just sit back and listen, and let's talk about how you can utilize your summer the FFA way. The first thing I want us to do is to look back. Whenever a school year ends, I think most of us have the same instinct. We close a chapter immediately and start thinking about what comes next. We throw our notebooks in a drawer, hang up our blue jacket, and tell ourselves, next year will be different. And here's the problem. Different doesn't happen by accident. Growth isn't automatic just because time passes. And think about it this way. If a farmer harvested a field and never stopped to ask why one section produced a better crop than another, they'd miss the opportunity to improve the next season. And they wouldn't know if the soil needed something different, or if they planted too late, or if they should change their approach altogether. And the same is true for us. If we never take the time to reflect, we risk repeating the same mistakes and overlooking the things that actually helped us grow. So before you make a single goal for the next year, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Not to judge yourself, not to compare yourself to anyone else, but just to understand yourself a little better. And the first question is simple, which would be, what was your proudest moment this year? Maybe it was placing in a contest, maybe giving your first speech, showing an animal, making a new friend, or maybe it was something nobody else even noticed, a really small moment. Maybe you finally found the courage to raise your hand during a chapter meeting, or maybe you introduced yourself to someone new. Maybe you stayed after school to help clean up because you wanted to serve your chapter. Sometimes our proudest moments don't come with trophies, sometimes they come with confidence. Now ask yourself another question. What challenged you the most? And be honest, did the public speaking scare you? Did you struggle balancing school, FFA work, and life? Did you lose an election? Did your SAE not go the way you hoped? Did you compare yourself to someone who always seemed one step ahead? Every single one of us faced something difficult this year. And here's something I've learned. The challenge itself isn't what defines us, but it's what we choose to learn from it. You know, one of the most valuable things failure gives us is information. It tells us where we need to grow, and success feels good, but failure teaches. And if you're willing to learn from it, failure becomes one of the greatest teachers you'll ever have. Then, I want you to ask yourself this. What opportunity did I miss because I was not prepared? Maybe you wanted to run for office, but you didn't feel ready. Or maybe you wanted to join a judging team, but didn't think you knew enough. Maybe you wanted to apply for an award, but you waited too long. Maybe you wanted to speak up during a meeting, but let fear win. Don't ask yourself this question to feel guilty. Ask it because today is the first day you get to change that story. Summer gives you something incredibly valuable. Time. Time to prepare instead of react. Time to build confidence instead of wishing you had it. Time to become the person your future self needs you to be. Finally, I want you to ask yourself one last question, and this might just be the most important one. Who do I want to become this year? Notice I didn't ask what you want to accomplish. I asked you what you wanted to become, because accomplishments come and go. You might win a contest, you might lose one, you might earn a degree, you might not, but the person you become along the way stays with you long after your last FFA meeting. Maybe you want to become someone who's more confident. Maybe you want to become someone who's more dependable, someone who isn't afraid to fail or speak up for agriculture, someone who makes a new green hand feel welcome. Those kinds of goals don't fit on a resume, but they're the ones that shape your character. So here's what I want you to do after listening to this episode. Grab a notebook, open the notes app on your phone, or find a blank piece of paper. At the top, write 3 headings. 3 wins. What are 3 things you're proud of from this last year? Not what impressed other people, but what made you proud. Then write 3 lessons. What did this year teach you? Maybe you learned that preparation matters. Maybe you learned that asking for help isn't weakness. Maybe you learned that setbacks don't define you. Finally, 3 goals. 1 goal for your leadership, 1 goal for your SAE or competitions, and 1 goal for the kind of person you want to become. Because goals aren't just about reaching the finish line, but they're about giving yourself a direction. You can't control every opportunity you'll be given this year, but you can control the direction you're walking. Every meaningful journey begins by knowing where you're starting, and reflection isn't looking backward because you want to stay there, but reflection is looking backward so you know how to move forward. And that's exactly what we're going to do next. If you're caught up in our latest episode, you'd be familiar with the terms SAE projects. Maybe your advisor has reminded you about it. Maybe you've heard upperclassmen talking about proficiency awards or record books. Maybe you've even thought to yourself, I'll figure it out once school starts. And honestly, that's what a lot of students do. I've done that as well. They wait until August or September to start thinking about their SAE, and then by then, they're already balancing classes, homework, sports, chapter meetings, practices, family responsibilities, and everything else that comes with the new school year. By the time they finally get a chance to work on their SAE, they're already playing catch up. But here's one thing. Your SAE doesn't have to start when school starts. In fact, I would argue that summer is the best time to begin. Think about what an SAE really is. A supervised agriculture experience. It isn't just another assignment, and it isn't something you do because your advisor tells you to do it. It's your chance to explore an area of agriculture that genuinely interests you. It's where classroom lessons become real-world experience. That's what we talked about in our last episode. It should reflect your interests. And summer gives you something that's hard to find during the school year. It gives you time to explore. This is the season to ask questions. What part of ag excites me? What career have I always been curious about? What skills do I want to develop before I graduate? And if you don't know the answer yet, that's okay. Go find out. Start visiting farms. Shadow someone who works in an ag career you're interested in. Talk to your advisor. Guys, advisors are so wise in this area of expertise. I promise you, They will be able to provide you with some clarity if you just go and talk to them. Agriculture is built on relationships, and summer is the perfect time to start building them. If you already have an SAE, don't let it sit until school starts. Ask yourself, how can I make it better? How can I keep more detailed records? How can you learn a new skill? How can you expand your project? How could you set a goal that challenges you instead of just checking boxes? Remember, the goal isn't simply just to have an SAE, but the goal is to have an experience that teaches you something. One of the things I love most about SAEs is that they remind us that learning doesn't only happen in a classroom. Summer gives you the chance to get ahead, not so you could be ahead of other people, but so you could become more confident, more capable, and more prepared for everything FFA next year has to offer. So don't wait for the first day of school to begin your journey, but start planting the seeds now and give yourself something incredible to grow throughout this year. One of the greatest responsibilities we have as FFA members isn't just participating in agriculture, but it's understanding it. Think about this for a second. Every time you put on your jacket, you're representing an industry that feeds, clothes, and fuels the world. Whether you realize it or not, people are watching how you speak about agriculture, how you answer questions, and how you carry yourself. That is a pretty incredible responsibility. But here's the question. How can we advocate for agriculture if we don't truly understand it? You don't have to know everything. Agriculture is far too broad for any one person to become an expert in every single field, but every one of us can become a little bit more knowledgeable than we were yesterday. And summer is a perfect opportunity to do exactly that. During the school year, it's pretty easy to learn only what's required for class. You're studying for quizzes, preparing for CDEs, memorizing information because it's only going to be on a test, but summer gives you something different, and it's the chance to learn simply because you're curious. Maybe you've always wondered how almonds are pollinated. Maybe you want to understand why water policy is such a big issue here in California. Maybe you're curious about precision agriculture, drones, artificial intelligence, soil health, or the future of livestock production. Whatever interests you, chase it, because curiosity is one of the greatest qualities a leader can have. The best agriculture advocates aren't the ones who always have the perfect speech prepared, but they're the ones who never stop learning. Here's a challenge I want to give to you. Spend just 15 or 20 minutes a day learning about something different in agriculture. That's it. 15 minutes. Over the course of a summer, that adds up to hours of learning that most people never take advantage of. This can be reading an article, watching a documentary, listening to agriculture podcasts like while you're driving, listen to local farmers markets, visit them, and ask producers why they grow. Over the course of a summer, that adds up to hours of learning that most people never take advantage of. Go read an article, watch a documentary, listen to an ag podcast while you're driving, visit local farmers markets and ask producers about what they grow. Or even go to your county fair, talk to the exhibitors, ask them about their projects, listen to their stories. Maybe your family's going on a road trip. Pay attention to the farms you drive past. Ask yourself questions. What are they growing? Why are they growing it there? What does that crop eventually make its way to my dinner table? Agriculture is all around us. Once you start looking for it, you'll realize that it's connected to nearly every part of our daily lives. The clothes you're wearing, the breakfast you ate this morning, the paper notebook you're writing in, the fuel in your car, the flowers sitting on someone's kitchen table. Ag isn't just an industry, it's the foundation of every life. And if we want to advocate for it, we have to understand it. One thing I've learned is that confidence comes from preparation. When someone asks you a question about ag, you don't have to panic if you're spending time learning. You don't have to memorize hundreds of facts. You simply just need to stay curious, because every article you read, every conversation you have, every farm you visit, every question you ask adds another piece to the bigger picture. And before you know it, you'll realize that you're not just wearing the blue jacket, but you're representing it well. So this summer, don't just spend time in agriculture, but spend time learning about agriculture, because the more you understand this industry, the more effectively you'll be able to serve it, advocate for it, and inspire others to appreciate it too. After all, one of the greatest things about agriculture is that no matter how much you know, there's always something new to learn. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership. If I asked you to picture a leader, who comes to mind? Maybe it's someone you know, like your chapter president, your advisor, your teacher, a coach, or maybe it's someone whose name isn't on a plaque or an official jacket at all. Maybe it's someone who simply made you feel welcome, or someone who believed in you before you believed in yourself, someone who led by example. I think sometimes we have a very narrow view of leadership. We think leadership begins the moment someone hands us a title. A chapter president is a leader, a state officer is a leader, a committee chair is a leader. And while those things certainly can be true, I don't think the title is what makes the leader, and I think the title simply gives someone a larger opportunity to lead. Real leadership begins long before your name is ever announced. It begins in the habits you build when no one is paying attention. Think about it this way. Imagine two students decide they want to run for chapter office. The first student waits until officer applications come out. They start practicing their interview answers, memorizing the creed, thinking about what they want to say. Then the second student started months before. They've been volunteering at chapter events, introduced themselves to freshmen. They learned everyone's names, and they've asked their advisor how they can help. They've practiced public speaking because they wanted to improve, not because they had an interview coming up. By the time elections arrive, they're not pretending to be a leader. They're simply doing what they have already been doing. And that's the kind of leadership that lasts. Summer is one of the best times to start building those habits. Go read a leadership book, listen to a podcast that changes the way you think, volunteer somewhere in your community, start introducing yourself with confidence, and learn how to have conversations with people you don't know. Maybe you can even write thank you letters to people who've invested in you, or reach out to someone younger than you and offer to help them. None of those things require a title, but every one of them develops your character. And here's something I've noticed. The people we admire aren't usually remembered because they were impressive. They're remembered because they made other people feel important. Now let's think back to the leaders who have had the biggest impact on your life. Was it because they talked about themselves all the time? Probably not. It was probably because they listened and they encouraged and they noticed when someone was struggling, they celebrated other people's successes and they showed up consistently. Leadership isn't about being the center of attention, but it's about helping other people shine. And one of my favorite definitions of leadership is this. Leadership is taking responsibility for making the people around you better. Not because you have to, but because you care. And that's something every single FFA member can start doing today. Whether you're a green hand or a senior, whether you won every election or never ran for one, whether you're naturally outgoing or the quietest person in the room, you have influence. The question is, what kind of leader are you becoming? So this summer, don't just prepare your resume, but prepare your character, because eventually opportunities have a way of finding people who've been quietly preparing for them all along. When the school year begins, don't claim to be the most popular person in your chapter, but aim to be the most dependable, the most encouraging, the most willing to serve, because titles eventually end, and those lessons teach people the way you lead will last far longer than any office you can ever hold. And in my opinion, that's the kind of leadership in the Blue Jacket has always meant to represent. Now let's talk about building our resume. When people hear the word resume, they usually think of applying for a job. But I think resume is so much more than that. And a resume is simply a record of the choices you've made. It's a reflection on how you spent your time. And one of the greatest gifts summer gives you is the opportunity to add something meaningful to it. You don't have classes and you don't have homework every night. You have time. The question is, what are you going to do with it? One of the easiest ways to strengthen your resume this summer is through service. Service is at the heart of FFA. Our organization wasn't built on awards or competitions, but it was built on the idea of making our communities better than we found them. And the amazing thing is that every hour you spend serving someone else is also an investment in yourself. If you're working towards your next FFA degree, those service hours matter. Maybe you're trying to earn your chapter degree or you're working toward your state degree. Summer is a perfect time to make progress before the school year becomes hectic. Look around at your community, volunteer at your county fair, help at a local food bank, volunteer at a church, help with a youth camp. See if your local animal shelters need volunteers. Offer to help your chapter advisor prepare for the upcoming school year. These are opportunities everywhere if you're willing to look for them. And here's something I've learned. Service has a funny way of changing the person who's giving it just as much as the person who's receiving it. You begin to realize that leadership isn't about recognition, but it's about contribution. Another incredible way to build your resume this summer is by getting a job. Now, I know not everyone needs to work, but if you have the opportunity, I genuinely encourage you to consider it. And no, your first job doesn't have to be your dream career. Maybe you'll work at a grocery store, a feed store, a nursery, a farm, a restaurant, a coffee shop, whatever it is, you're learning something valuable. You're learning responsibility and communication. You're learning how to work with people who are different from you, and you are learning how to solve problems, and you're learning what it means to show up on time, work hard, and earn someone's trust. These are skills that no classroom can fully teach, and if you find a job in agriculture, that's even better. But don't think that only ag jobs matter. Every job teaches you something. Every paycheck teaches financial responsibility. Every shift teaches discipline. Every challenge teaches resilience. And every one of those experiences become part of your story. And one day you'll sit down for a scholarship interview, maybe a college interview, a job interview, maybe even an officer interview, and someone's going to ask you, tell me about yourself. And when that day comes, you won't just be talking about your GPA, but you'll be talking about Saturday mornings you spent volunteering, the customers you've helped, the responsibilities you took on, the moments where you learned to lead even without a title. And here's my challenge for you. Before summer ends, find one way to invest in your future. Maybe that's completing 20 hours of community service. Maybe it's applying for your first summer job. Maybe it's asking a local ag business if they need an extra set of hands. Whatever it is, don't let this summer pass on without adding something meaningful to your resume. Because every hour you spend serving, every hour you spend working, every experience you say yes to is another line on your resume. And most importantly, it's another chapter in the story of who you're becoming. And that is something no piece of paper can fully capture. Once again, the beautiful thing about summer is that no one is telling you what to do with it. There is no homework, no deadlines, no attendance. It's one of the few seasons where your growth is almost entirely your choice. And I think that's what makes summer so powerful. It's a season where no one's watching. Nobody applauds for the hours you spend reading. Nobody notices the application you filled out. Nobody sees the notebook where you wrote down your goals or the conversation that changed the way you think. Those moments usually don't get posted on social media, and they certainly don't come with trophies, but they matter. In agriculture, some of the most important work happens long before anyone else can see the results. The field doesn't look much different the day after it's planted. You can't watch a seed become a crop overnight. Growth is slow, it's quiet, and it's patient. And I think becoming the person you want to be works the same way. Maybe the summer won't be remembered because of one huge accomplishment, but maybe it'll be remembered because it was the summer you decided to take yourself seriously. It's the summer where you chose discipline over procrastination, curiosity over comfort, and growth over excuses. Those choices may feel small today, but one day you'll look back and realize they weren't small at all. They were just the beginning. So when you walk into your first FFA meeting this fall, don't hope you'll be ready, decide you'll be ready, because success in August doesn't begin in August, it begins in the choices you make today. Utilize your summer, invest in yourself, and remember, every seed you plant now has the potential to become something extraordinary later. Until next time, thank you for listening to the FFA Way podcast. If this episode encouraged you, share it with another FFA member who wants to make the most out of their summer. I'd also love to hear what you'd be doing to prepare for this upcoming summer, so send me a message on social media and let's encourage each other along the way. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your summer, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.